In addition to the navigation pane that we learned about in the previous training video, how we can navigate through our document really fast by typing in a keyword, you also have the advanced find feature for those things that are a little bit more difficult to find. We'll also cover the replace and go to features as well. But first off, to find the advanced find. You can do it one of many ways. One way is to use the shortcut keys Control F. I know, it opens up the navigation pane, but if you already have it open, you're just a click away by clicking on the corresponding drop-down arrow next to the search box, and there it is, Advanced Find. Click on it, and it opens up the Find and Replace window that includes the Find, Replace, and Go To, all in one spot. Go ahead and close out because I'll show you some other ways to open up that window. Come up here on the Home tab to the Editing group, click on the corresponding Find drop-down arrow, and you've got the Advanced Find and the Go To. Both of them will open up the same window, but it'll take you to the corresponding tab. And you can see that when I hover over the Go To, there's its shortcut keys, Control G. Let me go ahead and click on, let's do Advanced Find. And it takes me right to the Find tab, close out. Remember the Control G to the Go To, close out, and right next to it is the letter H, Control H, opens up and puts us right on the Replace tab. And then my favorite shortcut key, because it's only one key, is the F5 key, and it takes me to the Go To tab, but hey, I'm only a click away to go to the Replace or Find. So let's go ahead and do a simple find with the cursor flashing in the Find What box. We'll type in Glenn and click on Find Next, and there it is, it found it. Click it again, it found it again and again. And you'll notice that the Find Next button is highlighted, meaning that it's active. Active for what? Well, the Enter key, because if you hit the Enter key on the keyboard, it's like clicking on the Find Next button with the mouse. So if you want to use the keyboard, hit Enter, it'll take you through the rest of the Glens that it's looking for. How about if we do something a bit more? Let's see what more is. Well, right now it wants to search the entire document. How about if we want to search from this point up? So the option is up, so if I go from Glenn here and I click on Find Next, it goes up. Maybe if I want to go back down now, or let's just do the entire document and click Find Next, or you can hit the Enter key on the keyboard. How about if we go ahead and use another option, like let's do a match case. So it's looking for the exact lowercase g, not the big G here. So when I go ahead and I click on Find Next, bypasses it and it finds lowercase. In fact, you can see the red squiggly. That word is trying to tell you it's misspelled. And we'll cover that in a later training video, but to be more exact, it's not misspelled, it's just a proper name that doesn't have the big G, the uppercase, and not the lowercase g. Otherwise, it's going to be a misspelled word, according to Word, my word. In fact, you can click and drag this around and see if you can find it, other Glens, without clicking Find Next. But you know what's better than that? Is how about highlighting them all? Click on the Highlight to highlight all. After you do that, it says Word highlighted 6 items. To clear it, you can click on the drop-down arrow again, say Clear, but we won't do that just yet. You can see that it found a couple here. Well, let me click and drag and see if it found, nope, nothing behind there. Or you can click on Less, because less is more, to see more of my document, so I don't have to find a place to put it. And let's go ahead and click More. And with it highlighted, you can keep clicking on Find Next, and so it highlights the highlight, but in a darker shade of gray over the yellow, as opposed to scrolling back up and seeing the entire highlight without it being selected as it goes from one to the next, and that's the one that's currently on, a darker shade of yellow as it were. And if you want to go ahead and click right into the document, do so, and you can click before it, delete the G and replace it, and when you do that, the highlight disappears. In fact, if you close out of here and you're like, oh man, the highlight's still there, I don't want to see it highlighted, just go ahead and perform any action, even just a simple space, and it unhighlights it. Let me go ahead and hit the backspace key so I can get rid of that unwanted space. Then hit the F5 key on the keyboard, go back to the Find tab, and I can go ahead and do a highlight all again and back to where we were. And if I don't want to manually go ahead and make every change within the document once I find it, let's do a replace, because I think that's a little bit fancier and more efficient as far as what I'm going to show you. So I want to replace the lowercase g to an uppercase G, so I can come down here and type in Glenn again. Because if I just typed in G and I clicked Replace, it would take Glenn here and put a big G, which is fine if that's what he's known by is G. But that's not what we're after, so once we type it in there, we can go ahead and say Find Next. It finds it, click Replace, automatically updates it, takes us to the next one. We can go ahead and click Replace, and, well, look at this one right here. It's got it highlighted, but it doesn't allow me to replace it. Why? because look at this, it's in a box. What kind of box? Well, when I hover over the drop down arrow, it's a citation option, meaning that I inserted a citation here. So the only way I can actually update this, so it's got the uppercase G, is to go ahead and go behind the scenes in the options for the citation and making the change there. So even though you can find it within the citation, the feature doesn't work, the replace option that is, for the citation. Good to know. And so instead of clicking Find Next, Replace, how about if we just go ahead and finish this off and say Replace All. So in addition to the 2 replacements I already made, it made an additional 2, so we have a total of 4 that was made. Click Okie dokie, and we're done. Let's go ahead and close out of here. I want to do Control Home, and I want to find Glenn here, double click, and let's give him the color red, because in this next exercise I want to show you, when I hit the F5 key on the keyboard, and I do a find, right now it's looking for the match case, so it'll find not Glenn, that's in red, but one that's in lowercase. And it brings up a good point. It still remembers what I just found until I close out of Word completely, and then it'll clear it. But because I'm still in the same session here, I need to go ahead and change this, or let it go ahead and find Glenn, but don't look for a matching case. So when I go ahead and click on Find, it finds him there. Let me go ahead and click in front of it here and say that before I go ahead and do a search, I'm looking for a format. Of all the Glenns within the document, I want to find the one that's red. It's standing right there, but I want to show you if you want to look throughout your document for a particular format, click on Font, and you can look for a font style that's bold, that size, whatever, and choose a color, an effect. You can see down below a preview of it. When you're done, click Okie dokie, click Find Next. You can't find it because there's no Glenn within the document that's size 12. It doesn't meet both criteria. So go ahead and click Okie dokie, and you can go back, click Format to Font, and select the correct one that you're looking for, or better yet, with the cursor in the box, you can come down here and say no formatting and start from scratch. And then we can go Format to Font and say that we want to find red. Click Okie dokie, then click Find Next, and there we go, it found him. Yay! Let's go ahead and bring this up. You have additional formatting options you can look for, like if you want to look for the paragraph, click on it. Certain types of paragraph, like a certain indentation, spacing before or after, you can get kind of kooky with this. And of course, the others, tabs, language, frame style, highlight, or you can do something special. Like if you're going to look for a paragraph mark, or tab characters when you get to a certain point. Column breaks, that gets pretty in-depth, and we haven't even begun to cover Word. So you may want to come back and check this out later after we go over some of these features and special and formatting. Ooh, let's not forget the Find In option. Click on it so you can find in current selection whatever you have selected, the main document. You can actually look in headers and footers and nowhere else, footnotes and endnotes. We'll go over those in a later training video. So we got that, the replace, then finally the go to. What do you want to go to? Page number, a section, a line, a bookmark. If it's just a page, like I want to zip down to page 2000, if you have that many pages, just go ahead and type it in here. But since I don't have that many, how about if we go ahead and go to page 3? And you can see that it's highlighted, so if I hit the Enter key on the keyboard, it activates that button and it takes me down to page 3. And you can go ahead and peruse the rest of the options when it comes to using the Go To feature. To apply formatting to your text, like up here on the Home tab in the Font group to make your text bold, as you can see when I hover over the letter B in the pop-up, it says it's bold. And the shortcut keys are Control B in case if you don't want to click on the command here, you can shortcut it. And you also have italics, underline. In any case, to do any of that, first off, you have to select your text that you want to apply the formatting to. So go ahead and click and drag to select it, and then I'll select Step 1 spiritually. Now when I select it, if I move my mouse up and over to the right, it brings up the mini formatting toolbar, which has a list of the more popular commands found up there on the ribbon in the font group. And so there it is, B for bold, I for italics. When I move over and down and away from it, it disappears. Move over and up to the right, it's permanently gone until I go ahead and reselect the same text or right-click on the selection, and it brings up the mini formatting toolbar in addition to the shortcut menu here. Let me go ahead and click off. Now notice that when I select it, it not only selects the text, but also selects the picture next to it. Why is it doing that? Well, look over here at the anchor. Hover over it. You can see in the pop-up it says the selected object is anchored to the document text here, meaning that the picture is anchored to this paragraph. How do I know that that's a paragraph, not just a line or a soft return? Well, we can find out by coming up here, Neighbor, on the Home tab to the paragraph group and click on Show Codes. As you recall, we did this in an earlier training video, and there she is, the little tiny paragraph code. And as you recall, anytime you hit the Enter key on the keyboard, it adds a paragraph marker. So even though this is one line here, it's got its own paragraph marker, so it's also its own paragraph. And down below it's got a bunch of lines, but between this paragraph marker and that one, all these lines make up this paragraph here or are tied to this paragraph marker. So what this means is that when I go ahead and click before and hit Enter, it takes the image and keeps it with that paragraph and moves it down correspondingly. Let me go ahead and hit Undo. So because when I click and drag and I select it and it goes over and it selects the paragraph marker, so it's got everything selected, meaning the picture as well. If I don't want to include that, then what I can do is one of two things. Let me click off, try to reselect it. This time when it goes over and it highlights the paragraph marker, go over to it and then pull it back and let go. Okay, that worked for me this time, but it's 50-50 that it works for me because I'm not always that steady when using the mouse. So let's try it again. If I don't want to play with it and go over and back and over and it's getting too hard, just go ahead and let it select it all. Then holding down the Shift key, hit the back arrow or the arrow going to the left, and the Shift is for selecting, but because we're going back to what was selected, it deselects it. So the paragraph marker is no longer selected, and hence the image is not selected as well. Cool. Let's come up here and turn off the codes so those don't get in the way of our artistic design here by coming up here on the Home tab to the font group, making it bold, italics, or the shortcut keys, Control-I, made it italics. And we can also change the color. Now, the letter A with the red underneath it, that's the default color. So if I click on it, it applies red. But if I don't want it to be red, then click on its corresponding drop-down arrow and choose, hey, look at all these colors. You have theme colors and standard colors. So you can see down below that the standard color that's currently being applied is the one that's outlined in red, and it's, hover over it, red. If you want to choose something that's like red in the theme color, hover over it, and it says it's not just red, but it's red accent to lighter 40%. And that's important because if you want to be able to collaborate with somebody in Word and say, hey, choose red, are you talking a theme color? And if it's a theme color, what level of red are we at? Is it red accent to darker 25% or lighter 40%? In any case, you can get more particular. And if you want to get even more particular, go down to More Colors, and you can see there's the standard colors. And if you want to get more custom, click on Custom. And you can see that red, the color model, has the number 255 and nothing for green or blue. So you can go ahead and come in here and change that and apply 50. And then hit your tab key and you can see it's getting a little bit of a lighter shade of red. Let's add some blue and let's do 50 there and see what happens. Maybe less red. How about if we go down to 25? Oh, now we're getting out of control. In any case, you can type it in down there to set your own custom color, or just click anywhere up here or drag it around. Notice how it updates the RGBs, and you can change it from a darker shade to a lighter shade. And basically just go ahead and give them the numbers here for the RGB, because when I click OK, and the color is applied and I click on the corresponding drop down arrow, it's nothing here in the theme colors that's highlighted that I can hover over and say that's what it is, dark blue or even a standard color, but when I hover over it down here, it says it's aqua. And it chose aqua because that's the closest color it resembles. So what you want to do is go back to More Colors, Custom tab, and say, look, go ahead and type these in to get the same color that I've got. So let's go ahead and close out of there and change the color to something more friendly, a standard color like green. And to apply that same color to other parts of our document, well, just go ahead and select the text. I'll do a double click, and notice over in the mini formatting toolbar, the letter A is no longer red underlined. It shows the more recent color that was applied, green. So I can click on it to apply green, or come up here. It's also up there in the font group. Or you can repeat the color by using the shortcut keys Control-Y. As you recall in an earlier training video, up here on the Quick Access toolbar, if you make a mistake, you undo it. But if you want to redo an undo, you click on the redo. But the reason why it's not redoing it and it's saying repeat is because repeat will perform the most recent action that was applied. The only time that this becomes a redo is when you undo something. So our most recent action was applying green, so go ahead and select something else, double click and come up here and click on redo, and it applies green, or the shortcut keys. Let me double click, Control Y, and it applies there. So if I go ahead and hit undo, it says now that you undid something. Do you want to redo it? So it's a double agent. It converts to the redo. If I go ahead and say yes, then it redoes what I undid, and it converts it to a repeat, so I can go ahead and continue on by repeating or using the shortcut keys Control Y, the color green. You also have the shortcut key F4, that if I select this, or well, let me click and drag and select that, hit F4, will also apply the most recent formatting, in this case the color. And when I say the most recent formatting, also if I go ahead and double click here and do underline, and double click over here and hit F4, that's the most recent formatting. Underlines that as well. Now let's come up here and undo all that. Well, let me go ahead and right click and do green. I like that. And in fact, let's go ahead and select this and change the font type. Well, there's my mini formatting toolbar. Move up and over to the right from Times New Roman, which is the current font. Click on the corresponding drop down arrow, or you can come up here on the Home tab in the font group and click on it up there. You have your theme fonts, recently used fonts, and all the fonts, and I'll explain the difference between the theme fonts and all the fonts. But in any case, if you got a particular font you're looking for with it highlighted up above, you can go ahead and just type in the name of it instead of, well, you can scroll. It's sorted alphabetically, but let me go ahead and just type in COM, and there you go. Come up here with COM, and it fills in the rest as I get close to something that's specific, like Comic Sans, if that's the one I want. With the rest of it highlighted, hit the Tab key, and it applies it. Let me go ahead and select this again and pull it back so it doesn't select the image. In addition to what you have up here, now taking it one step at a time, the mini formatting toolbar has more popular commands of what's in the font group. And if you want more than what's in the font group, then you can come over here and click on its expandable dialog box button, that little arrow, or you can use the shortcut keys, Control D. Let me click on it. Control D will open up the same window. In any case, you get the same commands that you have on the mini formatting toolbar and also in the font group, like the font type, the font size, and some additional ones down below, effects like strike through. You can see down the preview window before you click Okie dokie, it puts a line through it. Strike through would be something like if you had a sale, you had $50, the retail price, you put a strike through that. Then next to it you have the sale price, which could be $25. Buy now. In any case, you can go through that. You also have some text effects down below. Click on that button. And let's expand the text field by clicking on the triangle, turning it down. So you can say no fill, you don't want any color. Or you can do a solid fill, which right now is green. You can do a gradient fill. Oh, you can get really fancy with that. We'll talk about gradients in a later training video, but right now we want to keep it simple. Solid fill, you can have transparency. You can do a text outline. So if the solid fill is green, how about we do a solid line of, click on the paint bucket, red. Red and green, Christmas colors. You can scroll down to see additional options here, like the width of the line around the text. In any case, let's go ahead and click Okie dokie and take a look at it. Ooh, that's a bit harsh in the preview. I'm not sure I want to go ahead and click OK to show you that, but I can do that because I can click off and go, this doesn't work for me, and undo it. And go back to a simple green. So going back to where we were, we have what formats applied to the text here. We have up here bold, italics, the color green. You can imagine if you had more applied to it, like the outline color, maybe a shadow to it. Well, you can click on the expandable dialog box button, text effects, and go to the shadows. In any case, you get quite a few options here. Let's do a preset. Come down below and do perspective upper right. Click Okie dokie, click Okie dokie. Ooh, the shadow's applying just to that word and not this over here. And the reason why is because I didn't have it selected when I went to apply the text effects. So wherever the cursor's at, it'll apply to that word. So if I want to apply to all of it, then I have to go ahead and select it all and pull back and then go ahead and do the text effects. In any case, when you want to apply the same formatting, all the formats you applied to the words here to like step 2, can you remember all that? So you can come down here and select step 2 physically and go, okay, here we go again, bold, italics, green. Well, that's too much for me. Stay with me in the next training video and I'll show you a shortcut. Phew, thanks for coming. I never thought you'd make it, but I gave you a teaser And so what we wanted to do is we want to be able to take the formatting applied to the text here and apply it to the other text down below without having to select it and try to remember everything that's applied up there. And the shortcut for that is to first go ahead and click inside the text that you want to copy the formatting from, and then come up here on the Home tab to the Clipboard group, and it's right there. That's the guy, Format Painter. And you can see in the pop-up it says, or it asks, like the look of a particular selection? You can apply that look to other content in the document right now. All you have to do is go ahead and click on it, and then come down, and you can see that the I-beam now has a brush to the left of it. So it pulls in the formatting that's surrounding the flashing cursor, and with my brush, I can go ahead and click and drag and pull back and let go, and hey, wasn't that fancy? It took all that formatting and just slapped it right on there. Now you'll notice that my brush has disappeared, so if I want to continue, because I've got a lot more work to do, then again, go ahead and click back into the formatting that you want to copy to the brush, and you can either come up here, of course you don't have to click on it up here, but notice that when you hover over it, you get the shortcut keys that if you click inside the text that you want to copy the formatting from, instead of clicking on the brush, do Control-Shift-C, and then go ahead and select the place that you want to apply the formatting to and do Control-Shift-V. So with it flashing in there, instead of going up there and clicking on the paintbrush, you can also right-click on it, bring up the MIDI formatting toolbar because, hey, he's right there as well. And this time, instead of clicking on him once to do a single paint job, you want to double-click really fast, because when you double-click really fast, then you can go ahead and not only do one job, but hey, the paintbrush is still up. You can go down and do the rest of the jobs. And we've got one more. And we're done. But the paintbrush isn't disappearing. Well, you can go ahead and flick it really fast. No, don't do that. You'll get formatting everywhere. Instead, you can either come up here and deselect the paintbrush, or just hit the escape key on the keyboard and the brush disappears. And we just have our I-beam. Now here's another shortcut that I think you might find useful. We already talked about it, in fact. It was the F4 key. Let me go ahead and scroll up. Remember the F4 key, like when I apply a formatting, I double click here and I make it bold, italics, underline, will only apply the most recent format. What was the most recent? It was the underline. So when I go ahead and select something else and hit the F4 key on the keyboard, it just does the underline. Let me go ahead and hit undo a couple of times there. So what you can do is that instead of coming up here and applying everything from the font group, if you expand the dialog box, so let's see, down below in the preview window I have the word clean selected. If I go ahead and make it, let's come up here and type in MONO for mono to bring up monotype cursive. We'll leave it regular, and 18, well, that looks pretty good. Change the color, let's do red, and maybe we can click on and do an underline style. And then when we're done, when we click OK, it applies it right. But this time, when I go ahead and select something else and I hit the F4 key, it applies everything, not just the most recent, because the recent is in front. When I go behind, open up the dialog box, everything I do within there, it's like doing a single recent action, because when I click on it, everything here, when I click OK, applies all that as the most recent action, so it applies everything that I did within that window right here. Now, if you closed out of the document and you open it back up and you're like, uh-oh, I made a mistake here, I don't want the comma to be in red or have that formatting applied to it, you can go ahead and click and drag it. And then to clear it off, if you don't want to go ahead and come up here and deselect the I, the U, change it from monotype cursive to the body of the font, things like that, then come up here on the Home tab to the font group and click on Clear All Formatting. Hey, wasn't that slickery? And in fact, you know what? I may want to do it just for all of this here, and then come up here and clear it all as well. Next, if you want to be able to highlight parts of the document, not apply formatting to it, but more like a book, you got your highlighter. Well, up here on the Home tab in the font group, you do have one here. It's the text highlight color. So the default's yellow. If you don't want yellow, you can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and choose something else. And really, the only thing that works for me is yellow, so I'll go ahead and choose yellow. And then come down below and you can see that to the left, or kind of through the I-beam, is that little marker. So wherever I click and drag, that's where it's going to highlight. Nice, click and drag and double click, and then if I go ahead and double click over it, it deselects it, which brings up a good point. If you're done with the highlighter, then you can hit the escape key on the keyboard And if you want to unhighlight this, you can go ahead and select it and come up here and click on Clear All Formatting. Does it do it? No. You actually have to do the unhighlight option, which is, when you click off, just come up here and then click on the drop down arrow and say that you want no color. When you say no color, you actually get the highlighter that when you click and drag over it says no color. You hit the escape key. And then finally, one more thing that's kind of tied to what we talked about earlier in this training video, that when you select and includes the paragraph marker, it actually selected the image. Well, let me get you started on this. And what I'm talking about is, let me select these two guys right here, two separate paragraphs, right? How do we know? Come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group and turn on the codes. And you see those paragraph markers? If I go ahead and say I want to be able to convert this into a list, up here in the paragraph group, and I go, let's do numbers 1, 2, you can see that it's now numbered 1, 2. But if I go ahead and let's click and drag and just want to format read more, remember you just want to select the text and not the paragraph marker, because when I click on bold, it won't bold the entire paragraph. Now what does that include? Let me go ahead and right click and deselect that, and then left click and select the paragraph marker as well and click on bold. It actually includes the number 1, the listed item, which it matches. I mean, everything's in bold, but if I come back here and let's say I turn off my codes and I'm like, this shouldn't be in bold, and I click and drag and I select it without including the paragraph marker and I deselect B for bold, well, number 1 is still bold because I didn't include that paragraph marker at the end. Well, I can't see because the codes aren't on, but it allows me to select it. And you can see right there, bold is being applied to that paragraph marker. So when I deselect it, it will remove the bold from the corresponding number, the list item here, for read more. The tab stops are just like they sound, that when you hit the tab key, it'll stop at a point you set. And you can set the stop for the tabs at least one of 3 ways. The first way I'll show you will be setting them up here on the horizontal ruler, which if it's not there, then you want to come up here and click on the View tab, go to the Views group, and go to the Print Layout. And at the very least, if you're in there and you can't see it, then go to the Show group and check Ruler. Let me go back to the Home tab. Now, why would I want to set tab stops? Well, in this example, I want to create 3 columns of data. I want a list of all my favorite books in column 1, the author for the books, and then their cost. And to set this up, let me go ahead and type in the label for the first column, which is books. And to be able to get over, like, let's say at the 3-inch mark, to type in the label for my second column, I could hit the space bar several times. Let me come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group and turn on the codes so you can see when I add the spaces in code. But that would take quite a few, and it's not as efficient. Let me hit the backspace key as hitting the tab key. Now when I hit the tab key, it goes to the 1/2 inch mark. So if I hit it again, it goes from 1/2 inch to 1. It's a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and I'm finally over there. Now while that's more efficient than hitting the space bar, it's still not as efficient as using a tab stop, because when I set a stop here at the 3-inch mark, all I have to do is hit the tab key once, and it doesn't go by the default every 1/2 inch. It just jumps right to it and stops at that tab stop. Not only that, but if I wanted to be able to get right to the 2¼ inch to set my column, then I'd have to hit the backspace key and get at the 2-inch and hit the space bar a couple of times. And well, you can see the dilemma. The alignment may get tricky, especially with corresponding rows down below to keep it in the column to remember how many spaces I added. That's just horrifying. And you can begin to see when it comes to working with another document that does it this way and doesn't use the shortcuts like the tab stops. Also, when it comes to working with advanced features, the tab stop is the way to go. And we'll learn more about that in a later training video, but right now it's about tab stops. So let me go ahead and hit the backspace key. And then to add a tab stop, come with me, neighbor. Let's come up here and hover over. Looks like an L. You can see when I hover over it, in the pop-up it says left tab. That's a tab stop, but why does it say left? Because once I add it over here and I hit the tab key, it'll stop. But once it stops and I start typing in text at that stop, the alignment's going to be left. So for example, let me come up here and click on the ruler. Now you can't click anywhere on the ruler. If you try to click on the top portion of it, it won't add the stop. So you want to click on the bottom half of the ruler. I know it's so tiny it may be difficult, but let's try it. Click on it and boom, it adds the stop. It's kind of tiny. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there. So with my cursor flashing here, when I hit the tab key, boom, Oh, that's sweet. It went right over there and I didn't have to hit the tab key many times. And there's less code to work with, making my editing and working with this document more efficient. Now once I get there and I start typing in the text, the label for this column, author, how does it align off of that stop? Because once I get there it stops, but the alignment is going to be left. So everything that I type in gets pushed over to the right to keep that left alignment off of that stop. Now, what if I want to have one that does a center align? Does it have it? Of course it does. Come over here and all you have to do to find the next tab stop is to click on it and it toggles through. That one looks like an upside down T. To find out what tab stop that is, hover over it, wait for it. There you go. The pop-up says center tab. So to go ahead and add it, you want to get rid of the other one because if I click and add another one and there's two tab stops, well, when I hit the tab key once, if the center is to the left of that stop, then that's fine. But when I hit the tab key again, it's going to go over just like a centimeter. So we don't want that. Go ahead and click and drag that left tab off. That when you hover over the little L and you can see the pop-up left tab, then click on it and drag it down and let go and it's gone. Gets rid of the stop, so it goes back to the default ½ inch. That's fine. Let's go ahead and go back up. Remember, we're now on the center tab stop, so that's showing. That means that when I come up here and click on the bottom of the 3, automatically shoots it right over and aligns it how? It aligns it in the center of the stop. Sweet. Now let's go ahead and hit the tab key and, oh, that's right. It's going back to the default because it doesn't have a stop to indicate that it should jump over to the stop, and then once it gets there, how to align it. So that's a good question. If I want to have the column, like let's say over at the 6½ inch mark, if I use the center tab, that's not going to work because some of it will be aligned to the left and then the other will fall over into the margin and probably wrap it down to the next line. So I'd have the cost underneath the books and that's not going to work. So do I have a right? We got to find the right tab here, pun intended. Come back up here, click to toggle, move off of it, then move back on it, and there's the right tab. So with it showing, come over here, and because I can't click right at the 6½ inch mark because the right indent marker is in the way, then what I like to do is to go ahead and just off to the left of it a little bit, click, and then drag it over and on to the indent marker and let go. Cool. So now it went over and it stopped. Now, how's it going to align? Well, it should be the right. So cost, whatever I type, keeps it right aligned and pushes the text over to the left. Now, when I hit the enter key, we have to enter in those stops again. No, I'm kidding. Up here, you can see that it keeps it from the previous line. So, whew, that saves a lot of work. So I can just go ahead and type in my first favorite book here, and then the author and the cost. Let's go ahead and type in the first one. Hit the tab key. Oh, that's fancy. And that's it. Isn't that fun? So clean too. Now, if you need to make any changes, like you're thinking, okay, this middle column shouldn't be at 3 because the Elfstones of Shannara is looking a little bit too close to it. I want to move it over to the right. Be mindful of where the cursor's at because if you go ahead and you move that marker, it's going to move just the column for this row here, Terry Brooks, over. So if I click on that tick mark and I move it over to the right, see, that doesn't work. And also notice that that is in bold. And so what you want to do is you want to select all the text here, all the columns, and then go ahead and move it so we can keep everything in that column together. In fact, before I do that, when I click and drag and select all of it, look at that center tab now. It's faded. The majority of the rows for that second column are aligned, but there's one that's offset. That's why it's faded because it's not all together there. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and either undo that or come back down here and click in the bottom row and click and drag and move that center stop back to the 3-inch mark. I'll go ahead and hit undo. So let me go ahead instead and select everything here, and then when I select it, then I can come up here and notice it's solid, it's not faded, so everything's aligned just perfect. You can go ahead and click and drag it and keep the second column all together off of that tab stop and aligned in the center. Now when it comes to moving the tab stop, you know, if I want to get really particular, because when I move it over, it kind of jumps a little bit. If you want to do it numerically, hold down the Alt key, and wow, look at that. up there on the horizontal ruler, you can see that the left-hand side of that tab stop is 3.14 inches and the other one's 3.36. So if I go ahead and start sliding to the left, I can move it all around, or I can try to even and bring balance to the force. And man, if you're good at this, 3.25 on either side. Okay, I'm going to let go of the left mouse, and whew, that was tricky, but hey, you can at least narrow it down numerically at exactly what the left and right sections of the center tab stop is. And now you have some numbers to work with, so if you need to pass that information off to somebody else because they're creating a document and you can't send it to them for them to work with, you can give them the numbers. If you're having problems working with the tab stops on the horizontal ruler with the mouse because they're so teeny tiny, another way you can go about working with them is by opening up the tabs window, and I'm going to show you 3 ways. One way is that if you do have a tab stop on the horizontal ruler, you can actually double click on it. I know it defeats the purpose because that's the whole point of what I'm about to show you, is that you don't want to work with the horizontal ruler, but in any case it's there. So if you double click on it, opens up the tabs window. Close out, and if you don't have any tabs on the horizontal ruler, or you do but you don't want to double click on it because it's again challenging with those teeny tiny tabs, then come up here on the home tab to the paragraph group and click on the expandable dialog box button, because down below there it is, tabs. Click on it, opens up the same window. Or if you're on the Layout tab, you get the same paragraph group, click on its expandable dialog box button, and you got tabs, same window. Now first off, before we started messing with tab stops, I went over the default stop when you hit the tab key. It's a 1/2 inch. So if you want to make it 0.4 inch or mess with that, go ahead and set the defaults so that way, if you're not placing a stop position, that's the default stop every 1/2 inch. So we do have some stop positions, one at 3 1/4, but for which line or lines? Well, since I have the cursor on that line, it's only showing the 2 tab stop positions for that line. Well, actually, they're the same for all the lines, but point being, if you're going to make some changes in the window here and you want to apply it to all the lines, well, guess what? We have to go select all the lines. Okay, so come back up here, double click to open it back up, and then if I want the details of what that stop is, select it. And that's at the 3 1/4 inch. And then down below, what alignment is it? Center, and the 6 1/2 is right, right? Right. And so if I want to get rid of that, with it selected, I can say clear. And then after I click okie dokie, it removes it. So it's not there. So it collapses back to its default 1/2 inch. And if I want to go back and add it again, need to bring it back up, I can go ahead and take my chances and double click really fast as opposed to click, which is the same 2 clicks, but hey, I have to move a distance with those 2 clicks as opposed to a quick double click in the same place. In any case, to go ahead and add it back to 6 1/2, just come up here and click in the box and hit the backspace key and clear it, and then type in 6.5. Now before I go ahead and click set, what's the alignment going to be for 6.5? To the right. So then I can go ahead and say set, and it's right there, it's been added. So when I click okie dokie, hey, it's back. Okay, something else that you probably saw in the window is leaders. In other words, with my list of books here, if I add quite a few more, and I'm looking at like Scooby-Doo, and I'm trying to lead my eye over to see who the author is, and it's J.K. Rowling, and the cost is $17.50. Well, you get the point. The leaders are to lead your eyes. So they lead it in a line or dots or dashes from the book over to Freddy. So you can keep track of it by looking at those dashes or dots or the line down below over to Freddy. So to set up the leaders for these columns, to connect them as it were, and to lead your eye from one column to the next, then of course we want to select all of them here. Or maybe we don't want to include the labels, but just the data below each corresponding label. And then come up here, double click on the tab stop. And then we want to set a leader from, well, beginning to the 3 1/4 inch mark. So to set it there, you want to come down and take me to your leader. And you get a whole whopping 3 choices. Well, 4, you get none, but you can do dots, dashes, or lines. So if I do dots and click set and click okie dokie, hey, it does lead my eye. Let me click over here. And then, how about if I turn off my codes? Home, turn off codes. See, Scooby, I keep my eyes on that leader dot there, and it takes me right to Freddy. Now to add it over to the right-hand side for the same rows, let me go ahead and select them again. Come up here and double-click really fast. 6 1/2. And you don't have to keep the same leader option. You can do something else like dashes. Click set, click okie dokie, and I know, doesn't look apropos or aesthetically pleasing, but nonetheless, you can do it if you'd like. Now let me finish what I started, going over some of the tab stops in the upper left-hand corner. When you click to toggle through them, let's go over this one right here. It's the decimal tab. It's the upside down T with the point to the right of it. And so what that is used for is for anything that you have decimals in, like our costs. So if I go ahead and click and drag, and I say I want to get rid of the right tab in place of the decimal, so I clicked and dragged it off, and we got the decimal selected, so I can come over here and click and place it right about there. Then notice, based upon that decimal tab, is stopping the tab that I have from the author to the cost, or the dollar amount here. But once it stops, how is it aligning it? Well, it's based upon that little dot. All the decimals are lined right up, aren't they? So if I come in here and I say 1005, we still have it lining upon the decimals, so it pushes everything over to the left to keep those decimals just so. And let me go ahead and undo that a couple of times. Go back to our leaders. Let's click on the next one. This one right here is the bar tab. Hopefully somebody else picks it up for you. Ha, kidding. Let me go ahead and click at the end and hit enter. Now when I hit enter before I bring up the bar tab, notice that the tabs will come with me on every single line. And if I don't want them on the next line after I hit the enter key, I want to start a new set of columns without these tabs there. Once you click and drag them off, they're no longer there on that line. So when you hit enter again, it repeats the previous line, which didn't have any, so you're not going to have any from that point forward. Now what about this bar tab? So I've got it selected. Let me come over here and say that I want one at the 1 inch mark. When I click to add it, it just adds a line. I mean, you can hold down the shift key and hit that line on the keyboard, and you'll see the difference between the two. It's a vertical line, but not as tall as the bar tab. So let me go ahead and hit the backspace key, and of course when I hit enter, 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 it keeps adding that bar tab because it repeats what I had on the previous row, which began with that. So if I come up here and see if I can get it so tiny, click and drag it off, and then hit enter, enter, it's not going to repeat it. Okay, next, let's come up here and click on it to toggle. We have the hover over it, first line indent, which is what you see over here, the first line indent. Then you have the next one to toggle through, and if you hover over that one over here, it's the hanging indent. That one's also the hanging indent. So what that means is that when you have it selected and you come over and click like right here, it actually moves the hanging indent over to the 1 inch mark. Or let me go ahead and hit undo. I guess I could have clicked and dragged it back. You can also click on it right there and move it over as well. You can also click on, well, if you can get your mouse on it, there we go. I think I got it. Hanging indent, click and drag that over as well. In any case, we'll talk about the hanging indent, the first line indent, and then the last one, the left indent, and then over here, the right indent. In a later training video, we'll work with it, but keep that in mind. So when it comes to working with that, you'll know that you can come over here and have the second option by toggling through the tab stops, which includes the first line indent and the hanging indent. And the last click that I made toggles me back through. I completed the circle of life. I'm now to the first tab stop when we started the tab stops training video, left tab. Now the third and final way that I want to show you how you can add a tab stop to your document is with the double click. Now before I double click, I want to make sure that, well, I can't double click on the same line that the cursor's flashing, because if I do, it's going to do a paragraph alignment. It's not going to add a tab stop. And we'll talk about paragraph alignments in a later training video. But notice when I move the mouse along the same line as the cursor flashing, you can see I've got an I-beam with lines to the right of it. But of those lines, the left-hand side of them are lined perfectly, aligned left, and the right-hand side are jagged. So if I keep moving along the same line, notice how the lines flip when I'm at midpoint below the I-beam. If I double-click really fast there, it'll do a center align for that paragraph. And then over to the right-hand side, it'll do a right align. So we're not setting our alignments for that paragraph, so I don't want to double-click on the same line that the cursor's flashing. To add a tab stop, I'll have to do it on another line. And so if I go ahead and arrow up, there's no tab stops there. Arrow up, no tab stops there. So let me arrow back down to the last line. So I can double click on any one of these lines that the cursor's not flashing on, and it'll add a tab stop. What tab stop? It's always going to be the left stop. Doesn't matter what you have selected up here. Like if I go to the center stop and I double click really fast, you see that it's still the left tab stop. Let me hover over it. You can see it's left tab. So if you don't want to muck about and you want to double click somewhere really fast and not on the same line that the cursor is flashing, you can quickly add that left tab stop. Let me go ahead and hit undo. And you can turn the video off right now, or you can continue on with me because I'm having an ADD moment. So ADD alert. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add, it doesn't matter on the tab stops really that I choose from, but I'll just go with the left. Come over here and click at the 2-inch mark. And then let me go ahead and double click on it to open it up. Select the 2-inch, select my line leader, click set, click okie dokie, hit the tab key, I've got a line. And I want to hit the enter key on the keyboard and type in your signature. So I can print this off and have somebody just sign the line above where it says your signature. Isn't that fancy? Okay, your signature is not aligned, so let's fix that. To align it underneath the line up above it, the leader that we just set, let's go ahead and come up here and click and drag that left align tab stop off and click and add the center line right about there. Then come before your signature, hit the tab key, and hey, that looks pretty spiffy. Well, if it's not right on, I can click and drag that tab stop over and see if that's more centered. Anytime you create a new document, by default, Word has all the new text that you type in as left aligned. So all the text on the left-hand side of the document is aligned perfectly as opposed to the right-hand side, which is jagged. Because if it can't squeeze a word without cutting it off, then it takes that entire word, like news here, and wraps it down below to the next line. So if you want to change that and do another alignment, and I'll show you the different alignments that are available, like maybe right align, so everything on the right-hand side is lined up just perfectly, but jagged on the left, then go ahead and click anywhere within the paragraph that you'd like to change the alignment for. You don't have to select the paragraph. Let me go ahead and click inside of that one. And what makes it a paragraph? Because that's important, as we learned in an earlier training video, because when we change the alignment, we want to make sure it applies just to that one and not all the others. So it's probably a good idea to come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group and click on Show Codes to make sure, as you recall, that as you can see here, everything to the left of that marker up to the next one is its own paragraph. And it's a hard return, meaning that I hit the Enter key as opposed to a soft return, which is, as you recall in an earlier training video, holding down the Shift key and hitting Enter. When you do that, it'll move it to the next line, but without the codes on, I couldn't tell if that was a hard return in its own paragraph or just giving us a line that keeps it within the same paragraph that still ties it to that paragraph. So you can see that when I triple click really fast, it selects everything from that paragraph up to the one above it. So that's its own paragraph according to Microsoft. So I don't have to select it to change the alignment, I just have to click anywhere within it. And knowing that when I come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group to change the alignment, it's going to affect just that one. And so you've got your first alignment. You can see it's highlighted because that's the alignment that's applied to that paragraph, left align. And of course you can see in the pop-up the shortcut keys, Control L, and you can go ahead and do center line, click on it, and it updates it so it's centered. And that means it's not perfectly aligned to the left or to the right. You'll have some jaggeds, but it wants to make sure that each line is centered perfectly. And if it can't center it without cutting off some text, it takes the text or that word and wraps it down to the next line. So we can come back up here and do right align. In fact, if you look at those lines, on the right hand side here it's all smooth, but on the left hand side it's all jagged. Click on it and that's pretty much how it's going to be, because with those many lines, I doubt I'm going to have a perfect line like this one where it looks like no alignment was set, because it fills everything pretty much except for the last little space here on that line without having to say, oh, we need to go ahead and cut that off and put it down to the next line. So down below, Glenn Beck, that gets shortened because it can't take news and put it up here at this end to keep it perfectly right aligned without cutting off news. So it bumps it down. And then back up here you have what's called justify, and you can see in the pop-up distribute your text evenly between the margins. So click on it, and it creates some extra gappage or space. So instead of cutting off text, it says, just give it a little bit more spacing in between. In fact, a good example here is you see that dot? That represents a space. But what's the difference between that dot and that one that you can barely see? Well, the difference is that it went ahead and gave it some extra fluff between that dot and the letter A, and that dot and the letter G, or the space, as it were. So it can stretch that line out so it fills it perfectly. So let me turn off the codes, and there you go. So now it's aligned left and right, or the name of the alignment is justify. Now, another way to align your paragraphs is that you can do it with a double click, and it can't be paragraphs that already have content in it. So for example, if I come down here and I click on that blank line, you can see that I've got my I-beam there that to the right of that, you got the same lines that you see up here, right? You got it smooth on the left-hand side and jagged on the right, so left align. So when I come down here, let me click on that line and move over to the right. You can see that to the right of the I-beam, it's left align. When I move along that and I go to the center, it changes the lines and puts it below the I-beam, and those lines aren't aligned to the left or to the right, but it's center aligned. And if I go over to the right, then you can see that those lines are on the right-hand side, and it looks like left align, but if I keep going over, it flips over to right align on the left-hand side of the I-beam. So just go ahead and move your I-beam along that line to find the alignment that you'd like to put it to, and then double click really fast and it automatically sets in the alignment for that blank line or that paragraph. And you can see up here that we're now for that line align right. So when I start typing on that paragraph, you can see it's keeping everything on the right hand side aligned perfectly to the right margin, but pushing the text to the left. Now once you've typed it in there, you can't go ahead and say, well, let me double click to change it, because you don't get that option there. Remember, it has to be on a blank line where the cursor is flashing. So here's a blank line, but I have to click there to get the cursor flashing, and then I get the I-beam with the lines on the right hand side for left align, and then come over here for the left hand side for right align. And do a center line right there, double click really fast, and there we go. Fast clicker is now paragraph alignment centered. And then finally, hyphenation. If you want to save more space or have a more uniform look to your document, you can hyphenate words that wouldn't fit at the end of a line to break or hyphenate a part of it onto the next line. Kind of what you see in books and magazines. So to be able to do that, just come up here, click on the Layout tab, go to the Page Setup group, and it's right there, hyphenation. Click on it, and there's the default none. You can do it automatically, in which case Word goes throughout it and does it automatically for you, or manually, it'll go to the word that it wants to hyphenate, or it thinks that it can hyphenate, and ask for permission, yes or no, and where you want to hyphenate at. So let's go ahead and do automatic and see what happens. Click on it, and bagel, 0, nothing. Let me scroll down. Oh, hey, look at that. It did it in the footnote here, so Nehemiah, it looks like it hyphenated that, so cool. And if you made a mistake, you can go ahead and undo that and scroll back down and say, no, I don't want to hyphenate. But don't worry, if you did hyphenate, so click on this and go back to automatic and it hyphenates it, and you're like, ooh, I don't have the undo option anymore because I closed out and reopened it up. That's okay, because it's not a permanent thing. You can go back to none and it will go back to the way it was. So there you go for automatic. And I don't know if you noticed, but when we hyphenated, it took the word do and pulled it in because it had more room. When it took NE for Nehemiah and put it up here, we had 2 extra characters that it could then pull this over a little bit, make room for whatever it could add below there, up here, and so on. So let me go ahead and scroll up and click up here somewhere, and let's do manual hyphenation, see what it looks like. Hyphenation down to manual. Okay, nothing. Well, I know it did it down below in the footnote. Let me go ahead and click in there and click on hyphenation to manual. And there we go. Tells me it can hyphenate at these points. Do you want it to hyphenate at the NE? Actually, I think that's the only place it can hyphenate it at, so I'll say yes. So it hyphenated it, and then it went to the next one, gov. Yeah, we'll hyphenate there, that's fine. How about permanent? So you got perma. Do you want to hyphenate there or hyphenate after per? Well, we'll hyphenate after per, click yes, and there you go, per. So you can go ahead and do that manually. If I click cancel now, then I can stop it and leave those hyphenation as is. And then if I want to undo that, well, I have to have the undo option because I can't come back and undo something that was done manually. But I could do it if it was automatic. So if I go ahead, well, you can see it's already selected none. But if I go to automatic, it finishes off the rest. And if I click on it again to go back to none, again, from that point forward, nothing up here that I did manually will it automatically revert to. And then finally, any options for your hyphenation, you can go down to hyphenation options. You want to automatically hyphenate the document, check that so you don't have to come up here and go through that again. You can hyphenate words in caps, limit consecutive hyphens to, well, you could do 5, I guess, but maybe we want quite a few, or go back down to no limit. And then if you want to start the manual hyphenation here, you can click on it and it'll go through manually again, open up the window for you to pick and choose where you want to hyphenate at. I'm going to click cancel. There are 4 different types of paragraph indents I want to go over, and the paragraph that I want to practice these on is this one right here. Now before I go ahead and apply it to the paragraph, I want to make sure it's just to these lines right here and not the line above or the lines below. So as you recall in an earlier training video, when we come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group and turn on the show codes, want to make sure that all these lines are wrapped naturally and not having a paragraph marker at the end of one of these, because then that would be a separate paragraph if there was one right here for the lines up above and not include the line, well, down below. And so all these lines here are tied to that paragraph marker and they're not broken up by another one. So cool. Let's go ahead and deselect that. And you can click anywhere within the paragraph when you want to work with that paragraph's indents. And one way to work with them is by coming up here on the horizontal ruler, which if it's not being displayed, then come up here and click on the View tab, go to the Show group, and check Ruler. And as a side note, in the Views group, I'm in the Print Layout view. Now the 4 paragraph indents are up here, first off on the left-hand side, between the gray margin and the white working area on the horizontal ruler for the document. You've got 3 of them right there, those 3 little shapes. Hover over the square at the bottom, and that's the left indent. Go up to the triangle pointing up, hanging indent, pointing down, first line indent, and then the 4th one over to the right. That's, of course, the right indent. So, with the cursor flashing anywhere within that paragraph, I just have to go ahead and click and drag to the right, and it indents the text over from the right. Come over here, and by the same token, click on the square, because that's the left indent, and drag it, and it indents all the lines over from the left. Pretty cool, because I've seen a lot of people use this to offset something important, maybe like a quote, that will pull focus. And those are the left and right indents. And then up above that, we've got the hanging indent, and it's just like it sounds. Hey, do you want the first line to hang? Then go ahead and click on that triangle pointing up and drag over to the right, and it's hanging out. Totally tubular. But if you want to reverse that and have all the lines down below out and the first line in, then that would be a first line indent. So we can go ahead and click in dragging hanging indent in. And you want to make sure that you click and drag on the hanging indent to bring it back to the first line indent, the one up above that, because if you don't, you click on the left indent, then the first line indent is just going to be chased all the way over, and that's not going to work. So make sure you're clicking and dragging on the right one. And in this case, it's going to be the hanging indent, the triangle pointing up. There we go. And then click on the one up at the top, first line, click and drag over to the right. And everybody else is hanging out, or more precisely, the first line is indented. Now you can do it that way on the horizontal ruler, or you can come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group, and you do have your decrease indent. So to decrease what we indented, click on it, and it goes out. Of course, it keeps the first line indent, but overall as a paragraph, it decreased and went out to the left margin here. But if you want to go back, of course, you have the increase indent, and you can click that a couple of times. I'm going to go back and leave it as is. You can do it there if you're on the Home tab, or if you're on the Layout tab, you can get more particular in the paragraph group there. So you can see that the left indent is at a 1/2 inch. The right indent is a 1/2 inch. So how about if I want to do, let me go down, down. Well, there you go. You can see that the right indent is moving out. So it's indented at 0.2 inches. Nice. So you can work it numerically here, or either on the Layout tab in the paragraph group, click on the expandable dialog box, or on the Home tab, you got the same paragraph group, click on the expandable dialog box. It opens up the same paragraph window, because down below you've got the indentation area. So you have your left indent, the same dial boxes that we saw on the Layout tab in the paragraph group that you can go ahead and increase, decrease, and then you can look down below in the preview window, see what it looks like before you click Okie dokie, and if you're okay with that, go ahead and click on it. And then you got something special, which is the first line indent at 0.44. Oh, that's not exact. Let's go ahead and go up to a 1/2 inch, or better yet, click inside of it and go 0.45, and then click Okie dokie, and it updated it incrementally. I didn't do something drastic. And if you're not on the Home tab or on the Layout tab to click on the expandable dialog box for the paragraph, you can just go ahead and find one of those little paragraph indents, left, hanging, or first, it doesn't matter, or even the right. Just double click on one of those really fast and it opens up the paragraph window. So you have your special first line. You can do hanging and see it down in the preview. If it looks good hanging there, click Okie dokie, reverses it. Let's go ahead and double click. Of course, you can go to none. So you can go ahead and make your changes in the paragraph pop-up window here and click Okie dokie. And the shortcut key for a hanging indent is Control T. And then finally, if you've got a hanging indent and you've got like a term over here, and this is the definition, once you got it hanging, you can go ahead and click to the right of that word. Like if this is something, walk, and we'll say this is the term and that's the definition. Let me come down here and do Control T again so we can really pop it off. So what you can do is you can go ahead and do something tricksy here. Click after the term after you do your hanging indent, then hit the Tab key. Well, okay, we have to hit the Delete key to bring it back, but that's a nice little do-it-yourselfer to be able to create a term that stands out with its corresponding definition. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.